Hey everybody, it's Teresa. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to make a bracelet today, and I'm going to use some of these little rondelles here that I got in my last Beebeecraft order. In case you're not familiar, Beebeecraft is an online craft supply store. They have a lot of beads and findings and jewelry making supplies. If you have a channel and you have at least 100 subscribers, you can apply to be in their YouTube program and get products and do tutorials for them. I'll post a link in the description box below so you can check that program out if you're interested. They offer free shipping for orders over $25. Their website says the free shipping is not only for customers in the United States, but also other countries. I have a coupon code. It's Teresa10, and I'll put it on the screen here and in the description box below. It'll save you 10% off your order if you make an order with them. I'll put links to all the Beebeecraft products I'm using in the description box below, along with links to the other tools and supplies I'm using, as many as I can find. I'll also link the Beebeecraft homepage in the description box below. These are 3 by 2 millimeter rondelles, and they were called medium sea green was the color on them. I've got some Miyuki Delicas here. They're opaque turquoise is the color on these. Got some Miyuki 8-Os here. These are turquoise Ceylon. I've got some Miyuki 11-Os and 15-Os in the galvanized silver. I've got 2 size 11 tulip beading needles. I'm only going to be using one, but sometimes I use the other one when I want to add thread, and sometimes I just need one in case I lose one. I have my 8-pound fire line and smoke that I'm going to use. I've got this little clasp here that I'm going to use. I got it from Beebeecraft. I usually get these from Beebeecraft. It's called a slide tube clasp with bar loop. This is 26.5 millimeter by 10.5 millimeter. I'm sure they have these other places. I have a hard time finding these because different companies call them different things. I'm pretty sure Fire Mountain Gems has them. I'm not sure what they call them. And I know Beebeecraft has them because that's where I usually get them from. I don't know of any other companies that have them. I'm sure they do. But like I said, they might call them something entirely different, so I don't know. But I know Beebeecraft has them, and I'm pretty sure Fire Mountain Gems has them. As far as tools, all I'm going to be using are my chain nose pliers to flatten my thread so I can get it through the eye of the needle, and my little Beebeecraft scissors I got in my last order to cut my fire line with. I think that's everything. Hold on, I'll get some of my beads poured out, and I'll be back. Okay, before I get my beads poured out and start here, I'm going to talk to you a minute about what I'm doing. I'm going to make a bracelet like this one today. I made a ring a while back using this bump here as the top of the ring. And I showed this bracelet when I did that as an example of how you can do it in a bracelet. And I had several of you ask that I do a tutorial on a bracelet doing this. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I have a lot of you ask how much thread a project takes, or how much thread I start out with. I have never measured how much thread a project takes, but I'm going to start trying to do that so that I can tell you all how much each of these projects take. As far as how much thread I start out with, I usually always start out with about 6 feet of thread, and I just add on if I need to, or if I have a lot left when I'm done, I use it for the next project. In this case, I've only got I'm leaving about a 20-inch tail because I'm going to come back later and have to sew on some rows of delicas and add on my clasp. I don't know if it'll take that much, but I'm going to leave that long a tail just in case. You don't have to do that. If you'd rather not fool with that long a tail, you can just leave enough to hold on to, enough to put a needle on and sew in later, and then you can add in thread and do your clasp if you want to do it that way. And then I've got my stop bead here, and on this side I've only got about 3 feet on this side. Like I said, I usually start with 6 feet, but I don't want y'all have to wait while I pull that much thread through. I can usually handle 6 feet fine. Well, sometimes I still get knots. Y'all have seen me get knots, but it takes a while to be able to handle that much thread. I've been doing it for a while, so I can usually handle that much thread fairly well. But whatever amount of thread you add on here, you're going to have to add on thread before you're done. I'll have to, if I started out with 6 feet, I would have to add thread onto this. So it would be best just to add, just to start with whatever is a comfortable length of thread for you to work with, and then add on as you go. I know it's not fun to have to sew in your thread that you've got left and add in a new thread, but it's better than the frustration of getting knots and having to try to take them out or cut your thread off and start a new thread. So it's really just best to start out with whatever is a comfortable length of thread for you to work with, and as you go and as you do this a lot, you'll get to where you can work with longer lengths of thread. So I'm gonna get some of my beads poured out here, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to start out with my delicas here, and I'm going to be doing even count peyote. That's what this bracelet is. The whole thing is just even count peyote using different size beads. I've picked up 12 of my delicas here. I went ahead and picked them out up ahead of time so y'all wouldn't have to wait while I did that. And I'm just going to do even count peyote. I'm going to pick up a delica, skip the first one, and go into the second one. Sometimes them first two don't want to sit right next to each other. I usually push down on my stop bead a lot on this first row to help tighten everything up. So that puts the bead I picked up next to the bead I skipped. Now I'm going to pick up another delica. I'm going to skip the next delica and go into the next one. Like that. That puts that bead next to the one I skipped. I'm just going to do that all the way up through here. Picking up a bead, skipping a bead, sewing into the next bead. Now I'm about to go into this last bead up here at the top. Okay, so that's what I got now. So now I'm going to pick up a delica and go back down, and I'm going to sew into all the beads that are sticking out. Pick up a delica and sew into all the beads that are sticking out until I get down to the bottom. This bottom one might have got no, it's alright, I think. Push down on my stop bead here and get things tightened up. So that's what I've got now. So I'm going to go back up. I'm going to sew back up, picking up a bead and sewing through all the sticking out beads. And I'm going to go up and down and just keep doing that until I get enough of a strip of delicas to be able to hold on to. It doesn't really matter how many rows you do right now because you're going to have to come back and add rows on anyway to sew this clasp on the way I'm going to sew it on. So I'm just going to do as many as it takes to just have enough to sew, hold on to, and then when I come back we'll start with the other beads. So I'll be back. Okay, I've got enough of a strip of peyote here to hold on to now. And I've got my beads poured out here in the order that I'm going to put them on. I forgot to mention though, I started out with 12 delicas. You don't have to do that. In this one I started out with 10. So the bracelet I'm making today is going to be just a little bit wider than the one there. I'm making it a little bit wider because this clasp is a little bit wider than I usually use. But you can do 12, 10, 8, whatever. It just needs to be an even number that you start out with. And it'll just affect how wide your bracelet is. I've got my beads laid out here in the order that I'm going to be picking them up. I'm going to have the same beads on each side of my big bead. So I'm going to start, I've already started with my delicas here. Then I'm going to go into my 11/0 silver beads. Then I'm going to go into my 8/0s. And then my big bead, my rondelle. Then I want the same thing on this side, so I'm going to go back down to my 8/0s, back down to my 11/0s, back down to my delicas, and that will make my bump. And then I'm going to put some few strips of 15/0s in between each of my bumps to kind of make the bump a little bit more pronounced than it would be if I didn't. But you can do whatever you want to. You just need to graduate up and graduate down. And I'm going to do 3 rows of each of my beads. You don't have to do that. In this one, I did, looks like I did 4 rows of delicas, 2 rows of 11/0 silver, 2 rows of 8/0s, 4 rows of the rondelles, and then came back down with 2 rows of 8/0s, 2 rows of silver 11/0s, 4 rows of delicas, and then 3 rows of 15/0s. So you can switch it up however you want to. You don't have to do what I'm doing here. I'm just going to do 3 rows of each just to keep it simple. But you can do, whatever you want to, whatever you think is pretty. So I'm going to start next. I can get everything untangled here. I'm going to start next with my silver 11/0s. And I've got some beads poured out here over to the side that I can get to easy, and you all don't have to I don't have to reach across in front of y'all all the time. So I've got a silver 11/0 here. I'm going to sew up through all the sticking out beads with my silver 11/0s. And when you go in this first bead, no matter which side, top or bottom, you want to hold on to the bead that you're going into, or it's likely to come loose. Especially when you're putting different size beads in there. So I'm just going to put an 11/0 silver. I'm going to go through all my sticking out beads, sticking out delicas. Okay, now I'm going to go back down, putting a silver 11/0 between all. I'm going to sew through all my sticking out 11/0s with. I'm going to pick up a silver 11/0 and go into each sticking out silver 11/0, and then I'm going to go back up. I'm going to do 3 rows, and then when I come back, we'll go into the next bead. Okay, I've got my 3 rows of silver 11/0s in now, and now my next bead that I want to do is my 8/0 here. So I'm going to pick up an 8/0, and sew into all the sticking out 11-ohs, and hold on to this first bead when you go into it, because it'll want to come loose if you don't. I'm just going to go all the way down through here, putting an 8-oh, and sewing into all the sticking out 11-ohs. Okay, now I'm going to go back up, putting an 8-oh, picking up an 8-oh and going into all the sticking out 8-ohs until I have 3 rows of that, and then I'll be back. Okay, I've got my 3 rows of 8-ohs in here now. I'm going to put in 3 rows of my rondelles next. So I'm just going to pick up a rondelle. I'm going to hold on to this one I'm going into so that it doesn't come loose. I'm just going to do that all the way up through here. If I can get these rondelles on my needle. They don't seem to want to be going on my needle. Just going to pick up a rondelle and sew into all the sticking out 8-ohs. Just make sure they pop in there, because you don't want gaps, and you don't want any thread showing. And they don't act like they want to go in between those 8-ohs, but they will. Okay, now I'm going to go back down, putting in a rondelle between and sewing into each of the sticking out rondelles. Hold on to that first one so it doesn't come loose. Just make sure they pop in there between the ones you're putting them in between. You don't have to use 3x2 rondelles here. You could use 2x3 rondelles. You could use, or these are 3x2 rondelles. You could probably use 3x4. You could probably use a 3mm round. I've never tried it with a 3mm round. It seems like the rondelles work a little bit better because they're not round. But you could probably use a 3mm round, like a 3mm fire polish or something would probably work. I've just never tried it. And I'm just going to keep pulling those out and putting them back in like that so that they're popped in there the way I want them to be. Now I'm going to go back up and do one more row of my rondelles, and then I'll be back. Okay, I've got all my rondelles in here, and I was going to say I forgot, but you don't have to use rondelles or 3mm. You can just use, if you want to use all 8-ohs around the top or all 6-ohs, just whatever you want to do. Now I'm going to go back down into my 8-ohs now, because I want the same thing on each side of my big bead. And when I do this, I'm going to flip this over, because I want to push in. As I do this, I'm going to push in with my thumb to get it to dome like I want it to. So I'm going to pick up an 8-oh. I'm going to hold on to this rondelle I'm going into so it doesn't come loose. I'm going to go into the rondelle. And then I'm just going to put 8-ohs in between all my rondelles here. And I'm not going to pull real hard right here, because I'm pulling against these rondelles and they're sharp and they might cut my thread. So I'm just going to gently pull, and I'm going to push in with my thumb. Now I'm going to come back down with my 8/0s. I'll hold on to that first 8/0 I'm going into. I got under a thread bridge down here that I didn't need to get under. And putting these smaller beads in between these bigger beads is going to make it dome. And I'm pushing and pulling a little bit harder now because I'm pulling against these 8/0s and they're not likely to break my thread like the rondelles would. Okay, so that's 2 rows of 8/0s. Now I'm going to do one more row. Hold on to this first one. Okay, that's what I got now. Now I'm going to go back down with a row of my silver 11/0s because I want the same thing on each side of my big bead. So the next is my silver 11/0s. So I'm going to hold on to this first 8/0 that I'm going into. And then I'm going to put 11/0s all the way down through here. That's just going to pull that in even more, make it dome even more. Now I'm going to go up and down until I have 3 rows of my 11/0s, and then I'll be back and we'll do the delicates next. Okay, now I've got my 3 rows of 11/0 silvers in. Now I'm going to do my delicates, which is my next bead in my pattern here. So I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm going to hold on to this silver delica or silver 11/0 I'm going into. Put a delica in there. And now I'm just going to sew up through here, putting delicas in between all the sticking out silver beads. And now I'm going to go back down and put a delica and sew into all the sticking out delicas. Oh, 2 beads jumped on my needle that time. Sometimes they just want to be together. Okay, that's 2 rows. Now I'm going to do 1 more row and then I'll be back. Okay, I got all 3 rows of my delicas in here now, and that's a complete bump. So now I'm going to put some 15-ohs between my bumps. So I'm going to do 3 rows of my 15-ohs. So I'm just going to pick up a 15-oh, go into my delica. I'm going to hold on to it so it doesn't come loose. Just putting a 15-oh between all the sticking out delicas here. Now I'm going to go back up, putting in 15-ohs between all the 15-ohs, all the sticking out 15-ohs. Hold on to that first one. Now I'm going to come back down and do another row of 15-ohs because I'm going to do 3 rows of 15-ohs between my bumps. Okay, so there's 3 rows of 15-ohs. Now I'm just going to start my pattern back. I'm going to go back into my delicas, then my 11-oh silvers, then my 8-ohs, then my rondelles, then my 8-ohs, then my 11-oh silvers, then my delicas, then my 15-ohs. And I'm just going to keep doing that till I get the length that I want. I'm going to keep in mind that I'm going to add some, well, it really doesn't matter though. What I'm going to do is do enough rows of my delicas here that I can put this through my clasp and fold it over and sew it together like that. So it won't really add much to the length when I add the extra rows of delicas because I'm going to fold it over. So I'm going to get to the length that I want. And as far as adding thread, I'm going to add thread to this like I do every peyote. I'm not going to do half-inch knots. I'm just going to sew up and down through the beads, crossing my thread over until it's locked in, and then add in a new thread and do the same thing. I probably won't do that on camera because I'm afraid this is going to get too long because it's going to take a little bit of time to show you how I'm going to do this clasp part. So I'll find one of my videos where I've added thread to peyote and link it in the corner of this video and in the description box below in case you need to see how I add thread to peyote, but it's just really easy. I just sew back and forth until I get the thread locked in. So when I get the length that I want, I'll be back. Okay, I've got my length that I want here, and I stopped at 6 of my bumps. I could have done another bump but it would have probably made it a little too long. It's not hardly as long as I would have liked it to be. I'm going to try to make up a little length over here with this, but I'm going to be folding this over so it's not going to add a whole lot of length, but we'll see how it goes. So I ended with my 6th bump here, and then I just went into doing my peyote with the delicas like on this end. And I did a wide enough strip, and before I do this, I counted the rows that I did on this side, so I'll be sure to make the same amount of rows on this side. And I've made 25 rows of delicas here. And the way you count that is you just count your beads on the side, each side, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, and then you go on this side and count 14, 15, 16, 18, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. That's how you count your rows. So I've got 25 rows here. So I know on the other side I want to add enough to have 25 rows. So now I'm going to fold my piece over to the back, and I'm going to put my clasp through, put my needle through, and put my clasp through here, and I'm going to fold this over and sew it together. And I'm going to zip it up like we've zipped up peyote before. Now you can go all the way to the end here if you want to and zip it up and have that. I'm going to go about halfway because I want to preserve as much of my length on this side as I can, because my bracelet ended up not being hardly as long as I wanted it to be. So I'm going to go about halfway. And I really hope y'all are going to be able to see what I'm doing here. I'm going to find a strip, like where my recessed bead is here. I'm going to find a strip that has a bead that's a sticking out bead, like right here, so that I can zip this up like a zipper. So I'm going to go about right here, and I'm coming out this end 11-0 here. I'm going to go in the 11-0 on the end of my bracelet there. And then I'm going to go up into this bead, this sticking out bead. And then I'm going to go down here into this recessed bead, or this sticking out bead in this row. I'm going to go up here into the sticking out bead in this row. And then I'm going to go down here into the sticking out bead in this. I'm going in the same row all the way across here. Now I'm going to go up into this sticking out bead. And I'm going to go down here into this bead in the same row that I've been working in. And I'm going to come up here into this bead. And I'm going to go down here into this bead, just staying in the same row. And I'm going to go down here into this bead. And I'm going to go down here into this bead. And I'm going to go into this last bead here. And I'm going to come back around into this bead. While I'm at it, I'm going to go into that bead on the diagonal. And then I'm going to come back across here again. I'm going to go into this bead. This bead down in here. Get my needle out down in there. It's hard to do when I don't have this right up here in my face like I usually do when I'm doing this. I accidentally got through this bead right here, so you got to be careful about that. So I got to back this out of here. Okay, now I'm going to go back up into this bead. I go down into this bead that's down in here. I got it through there. I just got to keep from going through a bead over here that I don't want to go through. There we go. Now I'm going to go into this bead. I'm going to go down into this bead down in here. It's hard to get in there because it's down in there so far, plus it's full of thread, so it's really tight. And when I get under there, it wants to go into beads that I don't want it to go through, like it's trying to go. I'm just going to have to let it go through that one and back it out. I think I got under a thread there. I didn't want to get under either. Okay, now I'm going to go into this bead. down in here into this bead. I went through a thread here that I didn't want to go through again. And now I'm going to go into this bead. Now I'm going to go through this bead that's down here in here that's on the end. And then I'm going to go back up into this bead here and the bead on the diagonal. Now I've got that on there good. So now I'm just going to sew my thread in, just sewing through and crossing over my thread and getting it locked in. And then I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to add rows of delicates until I have 25, and then I'm going to fold it over and try to sew it in the same place on this side. So I'm going to try to look when I fold it over and make sure I have, like on this side there's 5 rows, and on this side I think there's 5 rows on both sides that I have left here. So I'm going to try to make sure when I sew it together I have that same amount of rows, so it'll be even with this side. So when I get all that done, I'll be back. Okay, there's my bracelet all done, and it comes to about 7 1/4 inches, and it took 19 feet of thread, which is why I buy this fire line in such large spools, because I use so much of it. The clasping just goes together like this. Slides together like that, and that's what we have. Like I said, if you decide you want to make an order with Beebeecraft, that code that I put on the screen at the beginning of the video and in the description box below will save you 10% off your order. As always, thank you all so much for being with me today. I really appreciate those of you who have subscribed to my channel and watched my videos and liked and commented on my videos. I have a website where I sell my jewelry. It's Teresa's Handmade Jewelry, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below in case you're interested, along with a link to my Facebook and Instagram and my email. If you haven't, I'd really love it if you'd subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. So until next time, I hope y'all have a great day. Take care.